There's a report from The Wrap that says that Americans spend 23% less on streaming services in 2024. The average U.S. citizen spent $42.38 per month on streaming subscriptions in 2024, down from $55.04 in 2023. Now, most people, when they talk about people changing their spending habits, first blame economic factors as a result. While these people are not entirely wrong, there are several other reasons why people are canceling more streaming services that don't involve economic factors. In this video, I have come up with 5 reasons as to why I believe that more and more people are turning their backs on streaming services and why it will likely continue for the foreseeable future. The first reason I have come up with as to why people are tired of streaming services, not just Americans in general, is that there's simply just too many of them. You know, back in the day, I hate to sound like the old man, back in my day, we played stickball, and we always walked uphill in the snow. It was never downhill, children. But anyway, I'm going to show my age here, okay? Early 2010s, there were only 3 major streaming services. There was Netflix, there was Hulu, and then there was Amazon Prime. And that really was it. And between those 3 services, Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon Prime, those 3 services had roughly 95% of all the movies and shows that you wanted to watch. And as a result of these 3 services coming out, Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon Prime, movie and TV piracy by 2014 had fell off a cliff, had actually gone to near zero, had not completely gone away, but movie and TV piracy by 2014 was not at the same level as it was back in like 2003 to 2005, when the Pirate Bay was like the premium site. I couldn't think for a second, but the same in music, right? Everyone was getting their music off of Napster, LimeWire, Kazaa, and then Spotify came out and pretty much eliminated music piracy entirely. But what's been happening since 2018 is that more and more studios have decided, well, I'm not going to give Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon Prime all this money. I'm going to make my own streaming service. And that's when we got like CBS All Access and Disney Plus and Peacock, that's owned by NBC. We had Discovery Plus for a while before that got folded into HBO Max. Oh, speaking of, there was also HBO Max. You know, this is the problem, is that there's simply way too many streaming services to keep up with. And what that's leading to is that, you know, don't lie. There are at least 1 or 2 shows that you are interested in on one of these services, but you don't want to pay for a whole bunch of streaming services. Streaming was all about the convenience. This is the long and short of this point. I know I've dragged it on for long enough. Is that the problem with having too many streaming services is that it defeats the purpose of streaming entirely, which was convenience. Right? When there were only 2 or 3 major services and they had 95% of all the stuff you wanted to watch, barring some like obscure television show from like the 1960s that only lasted 1 season. Perfect example of that would be the Jim Backus show. How many people actually remember the Jim Backus show? Exactly, not many of you. But still, okay, when you had 2 or 3 major services and all the content you wanted to watch was on there, it was extremely convenient, and piracy just made no sense. But now that the market has been so fragmented, the convenience argument has gone the way of the dodo. Which leads into my second topic, which is effectively you have these services that are playing hot potato with all these TV shows and movies. Hot potato, hot potato. Hot potato, hot potato. Who gets that reference? The first person to comment that reference correctly in the comment section gets nothing but the satisfaction that they understood that reference. But anyway, getting back to it. you have all of these different streaming services, like I said, that are basically playing hot potato with TV shows and movies, right? You'll have a show that goes off of Netflix today, but then appears on Peacock tomorrow, right? I believe this happened with the Harry Potter movies. There was a deal with NBC's Peacock, where the Harry Potter movies were pulled off of HBO Max, despite the Harry Potter movies being owned by Warner Brothers, and they were put up on Peacock for a short amount of time. Which obviously that also contributes to this, playing of hot potato, is that, you have to now track like which show is going to go to which service. Like Suits right now is on Netflix, but because that was on USA, I know the USA network is owned by NBC Universal, but Suits could be pulled off of Netflix tomorrow and then be put up on Peacock immediately the next day. And you can argue with all of this hot potato that it actually doesn't benefit these shows. Like, honestly, answer this question. And this is only applicable to fans of The Office, okay? When The Office was on Netflix, The Office became like one of the top streaming shows of all time. So when The Office moved off of Netflix and became a Peacock exclusive, ask yourself this question if you're a fan of The Office. How often have you gone back to rewatch The Office since it moved to Peacock, if you also have Peacock? Personally, I haven't watched The Office since it was pulled off of Netflix. I believe that was it was either 2020 or 2021. But still, I haven't gone back and rewatched The Office. I haven't gone back and rewatched The Office since then, because what's the point? I have to now subscribe to Peacock in order to watch a show that was available on Netflix for many, many years. And not only that, I know that this isn't exactly hot potato, but another weird thing that happens with shows and movies is, another perfect example is That 70s Show. That 70s Show was available on Netflix for years upon years, and its spin-off, That 90s Show, is a Netflix exclusive. But guess what? That 70s Show is not on Netflix as of the recording of this video. If you want to stream That 70s Show, you also have to subscribe to Peacock. So there's also that. The same thing happened with Fuller House when that released to Netflix back in 2013. Is that Netflix was not streaming the original Full House. You had to subscribe to Hulu if you wanted to watch the original Full House, despite the revival also being on Netflix. Instead of everything being in one place, again, going back to the convenience, now you have to subscribe to multiple different services in order to watch all of these shows, and like I brought up, effectively playing hot potato. So the third reason that I want to bring up, because I don't want to dwell on the second point for too long, is that streaming shows simply just take way too long to release a new season, and they are only about 10 episodes a season at best. And the perfect example of this is Netflix. Like, if we look at Stranger Things, okay, the wait between season 1 and season 2 was just a little over a year, which wasn't that bad. And then the wait from season 2 to season 3 was about the same amount of time, but okay, whatever. The wait between season 3 and season 4 from 2019 to 2022, you could chalk it up to COVID filming restrictions, right? Because 2020 everything shut down. But look at the wait between seasons 4 and 5 of Stranger Things. The wait time between seasons 4 and 5 is going to be roughly 3 years, which, if this were a normal broadcast show, would be absolutely maddening. And same with if you look at The Mandalorian. Seasons 1 and 2 came out virtually back to back within a year of each other. But the wait between The Mandalorian season 2 and Mandalorian season 3 was about 2.5 years. And each season of The Mandalorian is only 8 episodes. And there's apparently going to be a 4th season of The Mandalorian. But also, don't forget this. There's going to be a Mandalorian and Grogu movie coming out in 2026. So is season 4 of The Mandalorian going to come out just before the movie? Or is season 4 of The Mandalorian going to come out after the Mandalorian and Grogu movie? So that is, at minimum, season 4 could come out in either 2026 or 2027 in that regard if it's waiting until after the movie. But still, that's going to be about a wait of 3 to 4 years between seasons 3 and 4. Netflix's Wednesday, which was one of their biggest, like one of their most streamed shows of 2022, the wait between seasons 1 and 2 is also like 2.5 years. The Witcher was the same thing. A new season of The Witcher was only coming out every other year, and there's only 8 episodes per season of The Witcher. So it comes down to this: why are these streaming services not really investing in their shows? They're waiting so long to release new episodes, and these are only like 10 episode seasons at best. You can't build a fan base having this type of release schedule. The fact that Stranger Things has had any real staying power really is the exception and not really the rule. You can't really point to The Witcher because The Witcher was a successful video game franchise before that became a show, but still, these shows are taking so long to release new seasons that by the time the new season comes out, you forget about what happened in the past season, because we're looking at, in best case scenario, we're looking at like a year between seasons, which is even normal in broadcast. But normally we're waiting about 2 to 3 years for the next season of a show. And if you want to look at a more recent example, look at how Netflix is handling the release of season 6 of Cobra Kai. Okay, it's a 15 episode season, but they arbitrarily divided it into three parts of 5 episodes. Part 1 released in July of 2024. Part 2 released in November of 2024. Part 3 is not going to release until February 13th, 2025. So Netflix is releasing Cobra Kai season 6 slowly over a period of 7 fucking months. So by the time that the final part of season 6 comes out, are you really gonna remember what happened in season 6, part 1 and part 2? Maybe not, because even a traditional broadcast schedule, if there's 15 episodes and a new episode weekly, it doesn't take them 7 months to release 15 episodes of a show. Again, if they're on a weekly broadcast schedule, that's only just a little over 3 months. Actually, let me do some quick math. No, that's about 4 months. I apologize. I did some really bad math. An episode a week for 15 weeks is just under 4 months, not 7. So you have streaming shows that are taking way too long in between the releases of new seasons with very few episodes, but then you have these streaming services that are arbitrarily dividing these seasons into parts, and they're releasing them like 3 or 4 months apart from each other. It didn't work for Masters of the Universe Revelation when in the very first episode they decide to kill off He-Man. Now again, I will give the show some credit. They actually did something with the death of He-Man, and they brought it together at the end of the series, at the end of Masters of the Universe Revelations. But the problem is that Netflix only released the first 5 episodes, and killing off He-Man in the first episode of Masters of the Universe Revelation was obviously going to piss off the fan base. And so by the time part 2 finally came out for Masters of the Universe Revelations, nobody gave a shit because, oh yeah, that's the show that killed off He-Man. versus if they released all episodes at the same time, and there actually was a purpose to killing off He-Man in the very first episode, the backlash wouldn't have been as severe. But anyway, I've gone off on too many tangents, but yes, in short, you have these streaming shows that are taking way too long to release a new season, and these seasons have so few episodes that it isn't really worth to get into. And I need to look up something real quick. I know that you're not gonna see this, but I'm gonna come right back in like half a second. Okay, I found what I was looking for. The final point that I want to bring up is Star Trek Lower Decks. Star Trek Lower Decks is, I'm just going to say, is one of my all-time favorite Star Trek shows. There's only 3 Star Trek shows that I really, really like. That is Star Trek the original series, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and Star Trek Lower Decks, and that's it. Okay, Star Trek Lower Decks just concluded its run on Paramount Plus, and it ran for 5 seasons, released 10 episodes a season. So 5 seasons, 10 episodes a season. Star Trek Lower Decks had a 50-episode run on Paramount Plus. Now let's put that into perspective of my 2 other favorite Star Trek shows. Okay, Star Trek Deep Space Nine ran for 7 seasons, ran from 1993 to 1999. Released 7 seasons. I believe Deep Space Nine was the last Star Trek show to release on CBS, because I believe Voyager and Enterprise went to UPN at the time. But anyway, Star Trek Deep Space Nine ran for 7 seasons. Take a guess as to how many episodes there are of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. If you guess that there were 100 episodes of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, you are way under the total episode order. Star Trek Deep Space Nine ran for 7 seasons and had 173 episodes across its 7-season run. By comparison to Star Trek Lower Decks, that only ran for two seasons less. Star Trek Lower Decks ran for 5 seasons, but Star Trek Lower Decks only had 50 episodes. And Star Trek Lower Decks was an animated show, so you would think that it would be cheaper to release, to release 7 seasons of an animated Star Trek show rather than 7 seasons of a live-action Star Trek show. But anyway, I digress. It also goes to show you that this is the difference between broadcast and streaming. Star Trek streaming show only gets 10 episodes a season, but Star Trek on CBS, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, some seasons of Star Trek Deep Space Nine had like 26 episodes. I think the shortest season was season 1. And yes, Star Trek Deep Space Nine season 1 was the shortest season with 20 episodes in its season. Typically, Deep Space Nine seasons ran for like 24 to 26 episodes. And let's go back to Star Trek, the original series. The original series famously only ran for 3 seasons on NBC. So 3 seasons on NBC for the original Star Trek produced 80 episodes. Okay, 2 seasons less than Star Trek Lower Decks, but the original Star Trek had 80 more episodes. Oh, and one other thing I forgot to mention. Star Trek the original series, the average runtime of an episode was 50 minutes. Star Trek Deep Space Nine also followed the hour-long format. Star Trek Lower Decks, the average episode length was anywhere from 24 to 30 minutes. So again, when we examine Star Trek Lower Decks to the original series and Deep Space Nine, we arguably got more Star Trek on traditional television than what we ever got on streaming. But again, I'm also going to be the first one to acknowledge that I've gone on this point for far too long. But I just wanted to highlight, the streaming shows taking too long to release a new season, and the toll that these really short seasons are taking on a potential fan base. So anyway, let's move on. The 4th reason that I'm going to bring up as to why Americans are starting to get tired of streaming services is the arbitrary price increases. And everyone is going to blame it on inflation. Woo! I hate to break this to you, but Netflix was arbitrarily increasing their prices long before the current inflation. they were increasing their prices about every 6 months. And not only that, they're a lot of these services, it's not just Netflix, but a lot of these services are arbitrarily increasing the price of their ad-free service, but they're keeping the price the same for their ad-supported service. So what they basically want you to do is that they want to set the price of the ad-free experience so high that you have that it basically compels you to pay for the tier for advertising, but you're still paying for Netflix, you're still paying for Peacock, you're still paying for Paramount Plus, and they're serving you ads. It's not like Tubi or Pluto TV or Zumo or the Roku channel, where these are free services that do not take a subscription fee, but they rely solely on advertising. And there's an argument that you could make is that, the Roku channel, Tubi, Pluto TV, there's an argument to be made for you sitting through the commercials and the advertisements because they don't require a subscription fee to access their service or to watch anything on it, but they have to make money somehow, and they make the money through the advertising. So it makes sense. Why am I going to pay Netflix or HBO Max or Peacock for the privilege of sitting through advertisements? The whole point in going to streaming was to get away from advertisements, and that leads to my fifth and final point. The reason why people are getting so sick and tired of streaming services is just the sheer amount of advertising. Okay, the perfect example now is it's not just like scheduled commercial breaks in shows anymore. God forbid if you ever have to pause a show because you want to, because you think that you see something on the screen and you want to confirm it, bam! All of a sudden there's an ad for like Dunkin' Donuts or Progressive Insurance that comes on the pause screen, and you're just like, what the fuck is going on? So it's not enough to have pre-roll advertisements. It's not enough to have, advertisements within the program, which that would even happen on television. Now you have to have fucking advertisements on the fucking pause screens. Why? This is why people are getting sick and tired of streaming services. Do you know who doesn't have to deal with advertisements on the pause screen? The people that pirated the fucking shows. Okay? They don't have the people who pirate these streaming shows don't have to deal with the pre-roll advertisements, which you're going to get pre-roll advertisements even if you subscribe to the ad-free tiers, by the way. At least on Paramount Plus. I don't remember if Peacock does it, but at least on Paramount Plus, you're sitting through like 30 seconds of pre-roll advertising. So you have pre-roll advertising, you have in-show advertisements, and you have pause screen advertisements. Guess what? The pirates ain't dealing with them, but you, the paying customer, are dealing with them. And so more and more people are just throwing their hands up and going, well, what's the point of paying all this money for these streaming services if I'm going to get bombarded with nothing but advertising? Again, there's a case to be made. If you're watching Pluto TV, Tubi TV, the Roku channel, Zumo, Freevee, which I think got rolled into Amazon Prime Video, but I believe it's still free streaming, but it's ad supported. Like I said, there's a case to be made where if you're watching a free streaming service like Tubi that doesn't charge a subscription fee, that you're gonna have to put up with the advertising because, well, Tubi has to pay the bill somehow. But fine, at least they're not charging you a subscription fee. But you have Paramount Plus, you have Peacock, you have Netflix that want to charge you a subscription fee and show you ads on top of that. And more people are going, fuck you. And I know that I've dragged this video out longer than it needs to be, but I want to end off this video with this. Platforms like Netflix, Hulu, iTunes, now known as Apple Music, but I'm old. I'm almost 30, so I therefore am an old man in internet years. I still call it iTunes. along with Spotify, that's the streaming for music, and Steam, which is a PC gaming platform for those that don't know. Okay, all of these platforms started as a way to combat digital piracy. People were downloading movies, TV shows, music, video games over the internet, whether these Hollywood studios, record labels, and gaming companies wanted them to or not. What happened is by the early 2010s, most movies and TV shows were either on Netflix and or Hulu or Amazon Prime, therefore eliminating any need for people to pirate movies and TV shows. The same can be said for Spotify with music and Steam for PC gaming. What's been happening since 2018 is more and more streaming services and digital distribution centers have been getting fragmented. Now you need to manage 15 different accounts with 15 different passwords and subscription fees, potentially. No one wants to do that. Gabe Newell, the founder of Valve that would later go on to create Steam, famously said that piracy is a service problem, not a price problem. When most movies and shows were on Netflix and Hulu, movie and TV piracy wasn't necessary. But I guarantee you that there is at least one or two streaming exclusive shows that you're interested in watching on each of these services. Paramount Plus has all the new Star Trek shows. Netflix has Stranger Things and Cobra Kai. Apple TV has Ted Lasso. HBO Max has House of the Dragon. Hulu has The Handmaid's Tale. Amazon Prime has The Boys and Reacher. So on and so forth. Nobody is going to subscribe to all of these services just to watch one or two shows. What we are seeing now is people are subscribing to the one or two services that they are using the most, and I want to emphasize, probably not confirmed, and this is just an opinion, okay, that what most people are doing is subscribing to the one or two services that they are using the most and pirating the rest of the shows that they want to watch. Again, I want to stress that this is not confirmed, and that is just my personal opinion. I am not attempting to pass on a personal opinion as a matter of fact.